In this video, I'm going to show you how to take a simple splice loop and create an interesting musical idea out of it. This is the splice loop that I'll be using. Alright, now let's listen to the musical idea I came up with. So what's really cool about this technique that I've implemented is that every time the loop cycles around, we get a slightly different variation on the musical idea that you hear. Specifically, I'm talking about the vocal processing. So let's solo that and have a listen to it. Alright, so I'm going to show you how I created this interesting glitchy vocal effect. As you can see, I am using Ableton Live's simpler device with a bunch of effects on top of it. So I'm going to recreate this and try and match the original thing that I created. Alright, so I'm adding a new MIDI track. I'm going to load the original sample in here. So I'll just drag and drop it in here, and it gets loaded into a simpler device. I'm also going to just copy over the MIDI notes because it's just one long MIDI note. All right, so let's have a listen to what we have right now. All right, so it's just playing back the sample as is from beginning to end. The first thing I want to do is I want it to jump around and select different parts of the audio. I'm going to load in an arpeggiator. I'm going to search for arpeggiator. You can see the first result there. So we're repeating this particular location, but with this start percentage, I can relocate to different positions within that sample. Now I want this to move automatically. I don't want to have to adjust this with the mouse. So I'm going to make use of an LFO. So searching for an LFO here, let's load that in. So let's map this LFO to the start percentage. Let's go for a random shape. And let's speed this up a little bit. And let's have a listen. I'm going to offset the sample start here right up to the point where the sample actually begins. Alright, so that's set up, but now it's getting a bit repetitive with the same rate for the arpeggiator. So let's also kind of randomize this. So I'll duplicate this LFO and let's map it to the rate control here. I probably don't want such a wide range of modulation. Let's first have a listen to what we have here. That actually might work, but let's say I want to tone it down. I can reduce this mod amount. I do appreciate that it is bipolar, so it's selecting negative values as well as positive values. We can hit this button here to ensure it only does positive values. Actually, having said that, I think this needs to be positive only because there is no negative value for the start percentage. Alright, so we have some nice activity over here. The next step is to create a harmony. So I'm going to use the new Auto Shift plugin for this. So loading in the Auto Shift device. I already have chords sequenced in over here. So I just have to route that MIDI data into the Auto Shift. So under this MIDI in section, I'll turn on MIDI on. I'll set the input to chords. Let's choose pre-effects. And let's make it polyphonic. I only am playing 4 notes simultaneously. And now let's have a listen. Alright, so now we have harmony on the voice. Next, what I want to do is create a gating effect on this entire voice. So let's load in the gate audio effect. I'm going to set the threshold. Maybe somewhere over here, we'll come back to this, but I'll set the return all the way down to 0 dB and set the floor all the way down to negative infinity. We can give this a little bit of attack and maybe a little bit more hold and a little bit more release. Now currently the gate is listening to itself, and based on that incoming signal, it's deciding if we hear the signal or not. But I'm going to set this to sidechain mode. I'm going to connect it to something rhythmic. So what I did was I looked for a glitchy sample. I just searched for glitch perk. So glitch perk is what I typed in. And under the samples category, I found this sample here. Kind of random glitchy percussion. If I select show in places, this is coming from the glitch and wash sample pack. All right, so we have that already loaded in. Let's have a listen to it. I also warped it so it is in the correct tempo. Now, when I'm going to listen to this, I'm going to bring the volume all the way down. But I'm just going to make the gate over here listen to it. So glitch perk 120 BPM, that's selected. And now let's have a listen to this pattern. All right, so now we need to adjust the threshold. We can give a little bit more gain to that signal. All right, so now we have this very glitchy gating effect on the vocals. Now, if you want this to be more related to your musical idea, because we're not really hearing this glitch percussion, you can actually choose the main drum pattern of your sequence. So I have this drum pattern. Let's listen to these two together. So it's a little bit more related, the rhythm at least. So you might like that, but I kind of like the glitch percussion. Not related to the drum loop, it's kind of doing its own thing. All right, the next thing I want to do is play around with some auto shift parameters. I like the sound of this formant parameter going up and down like this. So again, we'll use an LFO. Search for an LFO. Load that in. Drag it over here and let's map it to formant. I'm going to slow it down and go for a stray LFO. So not quite a sine wave shape, but that's just going to move that formant control back and forth. I also want to transpose the pitch here. Let's just hear the vocals for a second. So transposing this up 12 semitones, I'm going to increase this formant follow and maybe transposing it down 12 semitones. All right, so another LFO. I'll just duplicate this one. I'll map it to a pitch. Now the problem is I don't want any of those in between positions. So I guess I could choose square. So square will select the highest and the lowest. That's great. Let's have a listen to that. So we get octave up and octave down. Now the problem with this is it's a bit too consistent because it is a square wave. So maybe we can go with bin here. So bin is essentially a square wave, but it's a bit more randomized, or I would say a lot more randomized. All right, one last creative thing we're going to add to this is a resonator. So I'm just searching for the resonator effect. Just a stock Ableton Live resonator. So this should give the sound a little bit more of a tail because we're gating the signal pretty aggressively. So this might sound a bit nicer. I'm going to set up a C minor type chord over here. Let's say +3, +7, maybe a -7, so +10, maybe a -9, so 14. Let's have a listen to that. I'll turn off the filter. That's pretty cool. Next, let's add an EQ to clean this up a little bit. Use an EQ8, maybe a bit too much low end there. Brighten up some of the highs. I just realized going back to that pitch modulation, I'm going to smoothen this up a little bit. So you get a gliding effect. as opposed to just jumping from one octave to another. Alright, so EQ8, brightening up the highs. And lastly, let's add an OTT preset. Turn down the amount, increase the time. Alright, let's hear this with the rest of my sequence. I may want to tone down the rate going that fast. So we can even get out of mod mode and set a minimum and maximum. Maybe slow this down a bit or synchronize this. It's going a bit too slow now, so I'll reduce the highest value here. Getting some triplets in there, that sounds kind of cool. And that's basically the idea. So we took a very simple splice loop that sounds like this and completely transformed it. Hope you enjoyed that. Stay tuned for a lot more tutorials.